Hey, welcome back to Dad Space, a podcast for dads by dads. Mike DiCiocco's on with me today. Mike is from just down the road. Like I'm pointing, like you can see where I'm pointing. I'm in Ontario, Canada, near Niagara Falls. Mike is in Buffalo, New York. Woohoo! Buffalo. Go Bills. Go Sabres and such. Mike is here to talk about his dad's story. And we have a great conversation around remembering our own dads, thinking about our children and the example we do, and we live for them every day. It's all about what's caught and not just what's taught here on Dad Space. Great episode with Mike. I really loved having him here. And here we go. Mike is on the podcast. Here's Mike. Everybody, welcome back to Dad Space. Got another dad with me, and we just live down the road from each other, which is amazing. I'm here in Ontario, Canada. My guest is in New York State, and we are separated by a bridge, and that's about it. And I love going down to Buffalo, New York, and going to Tops and getting my big thing of milk and all that great stuff. And anyways, I'm going off on my little tangent. Welcome to my guest today on Dad Space. Nice to have you here, Mike. Welcome.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate you. And I love the fact that the bridge that brings, Buffalo, New York or the Niagara area together with the Niagara side of Canada is the Peace Bridge, right? What better bridge to bring countries together, neighboring countries.
Right. And then we have the Rainbow Bridge.
We got the
and
rainbow.
That one's cool because I get to walk to the States, which is kind of fun when you go down to actually see the falls. So it's standing in that spot on the bridge where you have 1 foot in the U.S. and 1 foot in Canada, and you're like, I have a real split personality in that moment. But it's kind of cool to do that little walk across there as well.
Yeah, I always have like a love, for every time I meet Canadians, it seems podcasting and business, a lot of great people and great comedians. Harlan Williams, Jim Carrey are two that come to mind. And many, many more. But yeah, there's just there's a chillness about kind of the Canadian culture, which I really like. One of my clients is up in Canada as well, and he's a really cool, relaxed guy. And so, yeah, I didn't know that you were Canadian, so this is cool. Little connection there over the Peace Bridge.
Nice. Yeah. One of my sister-in-law went to high school here in Ontario, and one of her classmates was a jokester and never paid attention and would actually say, I don't need science, I don't need math, I'm going to be famous. And she's just like, whatever. And ended up being quite famous. Jim Carrey is his name. So pretty amazing that she got to see him as a teenager, and he's the same now as he was then. So yeah, so it's pretty cool.
What I love about him.
Yeah.
Want to hear a quick, funny Canadian story? It's actually got married in Hamilton, Ontario.
What?
In Cops Coliseum was the venue, but a hotel that we were staying at that night. So it was my girlfriend at the time. And I had the ring on me. I knew we were going up, we were going over the border. I was very nervous at the border that they could stop you for anything. Like if you look at them the wrong way, they're like, all right, step out. Like we got to check the situation. And if they noticed that I had something in my pocket, that would have been suspicious. I was ready to get down on one knee right there at the border. Like if they stopped me for any reason, they asked what we were doing. We were going to see Star Wars in concert. We were both Star Wars geeks, and it was summertime. It was July. I remember I was working a lot of hours at the time. This was back in 2010, 13 years ago. And, I remember I had a weekend off, and that's about all the time I could get off back then. And so did she. So I planned this cool thing to go. We got VIP passes to Star Wars in concert, I was hoping John Williams would have been there. He was not there. I love John Williams and all the music of Star Wars, but they had a live orchestra, and they basically, at that point, it was the 6 films. The new ones didn't come out yet. And they kind of cut them all together, and they were telling different intertwining stories with music behind it with a live orchestra. Huge screen. I was thinking I was going to get Will You Marry Me up on the screen at the end of it or anything. I couldn't pull that off. But what I did pull off was later that evening after the event, we're hanging out at our hotel room. I remember it very well. Tommy Boy was on the TV. I was trying to get her attention. Forget this. We've seen this movie 100 times. I got, and I asked, I got down on one knee and did the kind of classic proposal. And her first thing she says, "Did you ask my dad? Did you talk to my dad yet?" I'm like, "Yes, I got that all figured out." Like, what's your answer? I want to hear like a confident yes, is what I'm thinking. We were married for 6 years, ended up going through a divorce. We have a beautiful daughter together, but Hamilton, Ontario, of all places, is where
The Hammer.
where it happened. That's where it happened. Cops Coliseum. So, yeah, that was a
Cool.
special weekend for us.
Well, there you go. Awesome. I love that. I love the connection with Canada. That's great. And I love talking to people that are close to home. I actually had a podcast interview last week, and the people actually live 4 blocks from my house, and I met them online. And I'm like,
yeah,
seriously? Like I can almost see your house from here. So that's amazing how you can connect with people. So let's talk a little bit just before we jump into Dad Space. You do have a podcast thing that you do, and you help people, and we'll put links in again at the end for all that. But what is the draw for you in podcasting? Why is this so important to you?
I fell in love with it first as a consumer, if you want to use that term, but someone who just listened to a lot of shows. I got a lot of value, basically kind of mentally downloading all the information. So previous to becoming a business owner, I was in sales. I drove around a lot. I called it the university on wheels. Like I was a sales store manager for a company. And so I'd go around to like different stores and different, trainings we'd have out of town, either flying or driving. And so I used to have a lot of time when I could listen to, and I love music too. So I used to just listen to music, but then I'm trying to think of like some of the early shows were Ed Milet. I used to listen to Grant Cardone more than I do today, but like Gary Vaynerchuk, Lewis House, a lot of these guys that really started from nothing or very little and built this amazing story and financial success. And the whole thing is, I remember thinking like, why not me too? And that's what really started to get that, like, if they did it, I can do it. And a lot of them were sharing that story. Like, you can do this too. So a lot of my like personal beliefs and change in the way that I was thinking about things, like it was very different than how I thought from an early age. And I can kind of share my backstory into education. And then a couple years later into listening to podcasts, I'd say like 3-4 years of listening to these shows, eventually I finally had a moment where I said, I'm going to go into this and launch into it. So I just really love the fact that you can learn things for free most of the time. At that time, I think it was all free. They didn't really have the paywall back then. And these entrepreneurs were just sharing their life story or different pieces of information and insights. And I felt like a fly on the wall. I'm like, man, how would I ever be able to hear like Elon Musk, whether you love him or hate him, talk to somebody and share some really interesting information where, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, or even longer, you wouldn't be able to even have that. You'd have to read it. It would be so filtered down by the time it was out to the public. Who knows what the real conversation at the coffee shop was. Now, set up a microphone, everybody's invited to the conversation.
Yeah.
And so I fell in love with that. And then, so that kind of gives you the idea of why I care about podcasting. It just really was heavy on my heart as far as something that I wanted to give time and attention to. And then as far as the production side of it, I went to school for media production. And once I got into business, a friend of mine had a podcast already going that was very popular at the time. And he was looking for a new producer. Already had like 100 episodes out. He was doing well. And I ended up producing about 50 new episodes for him. Learned how to do it. I mean, my media production background kind of connected the dots. And I just had to kind of learn the podcasting space and the game and what goes into making a great podcast and what it takes to have a successful show. And after about 50 shows of working with him, I decided to launch my own show. And it became something where my clients at that point, I was doing media and marketing. And I kind of knew I wanted to transition out of it because it was kind of too vague. And I was doing so many different things that my mentors were like, you got to pick a lane and really fall in love with it and go like drive in that direction 100 miles per hour. And I was like, I really love doing podcasting for my friend. And so once I launched Mic'd Up, which is my podcast, my clients started asking me like, dude, you're doing podcasting too? Like, do you think you can help do that for our business? And a light bulb went off. I'm like, I didn't even think about doing this for businesses. I thought just doing it for friends and making a little extra scratch on the side. And then it became a lucrative business. And I rebranded Social Chameleon, a media and marketing company, to Podcasting Done For You. And just kept the name. I felt like Social Chameleon, the word socializing works for podcasting. I didn't have to really rebrand. I just had to kind of reposition myself in the market and let everybody know this is what we're focused on. The pandemic hit like right after I did that, and everything went virtual. And I'm like, I'm already operating virtually. So I literally was like kind of 2x speed compared to everyone else who was trying to figure things out and kind of stutter stepping.
Yeah.
So I have clients all over the country. I even have some clients out of the country now that they send us the files. Like they press record like you just did today on Zoom or Riverside or whatever platform they like to use, record an interview or a show. Doesn't always have to have two people. And then they send us the files and we do the rest. And so I just love that. And a lot of the people I work with are entrepreneurs, forward thinkers, people that are doing shows that have positive minded content similar to your shows. And that's who we love to work with. Like if someone came to me and they said, like, we got some show about Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy hockey or something, as much as maybe those things may be interesting to me, which they're not. I do like hockey, but I'm just like using some random examples. If it doesn't fit our mission, I'm not necessarily going to say yes to that. So we're really looking for specific like businesses, business-minded entrepreneurs that are doing good in the world. That's who we want to connect with. And even more recently, even going into like faith-based organizations and people who are tied to their Christian faith. I don't turn anyone away if they're not. But when that happens to be a great connection, it feels so good.
Good. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you have a vision for what you want to have and put out in the world. It's kind of nice because, again, we want all podcasters and all podcast listeners and everything to be as inclusive as possible. But when you can really focus in on a group, then you can serve them even better, right? So I love that.
And then people say, like, what's your why? I mean, right here, I'm showing you a picture of my daughter. We're at Disney there. She's eating the Mickey Mouse Disney ice cream, the Disney ears, classic. But yeah, she's my little podcast sidekick right now. Sometimes when she's with me, when I'm recording, I'll have her kind of come over and we'll do something before I actually start the show. And actually a recent episode that I did like a solo show talking about a current event that was heavy on my heart. I did a little mini interview with her on the show. So
nice.
As a dad, I like to encourage her to see what I'm doing so it doesn't feel like dad's off in his own world. Like I want her to be included in understanding why I work hard, what I love doing, what I'm passionate about. If she has an interest as she gets older and wants to learn how to do it or even be an assistant or help out with the business, she's got the path to do that. But if she has no interest in it when she's older and wants to do her own thing, man, I am going to support her journey in whatever it is and give her the tools, whatever tools I have, or if I don't have the answers, I'm very resourceful. That's one of the great things of being an entrepreneur is you always figure it out. If you don't have the answers, you go and find them. So whatever it is that her heart has for her, man, I'm just excited to help her get there.
Sweet. And I love your segue right into Dad Talk. This is good from podcasting to Dad Talk. Your
You're
story.
welcome.
Well done. Well done. I love having podcasters on because it's so easy to have
David's
a conversation.
under the net. There it is. Mike alley-oop.
Right across the plate. Awesome. So take me back to the early days, when your daughter was born and you're a new dad. What are some of the things that you really wish somebody would have just sat you down in the room at the hospital before you went down to the hallway to have your daughter and just had a conversation with you and said, listen, I want 5 minutes. I just want to talk to you for a second. Here are some of the things that you should know. Because I'm imagining somebody listening to this podcast, sitting in a waiting room of a hospital. There's those magazines that are not even worth reading, and they're pushing play on this episode. And you have a chance to speak to that dad right now that's going to be a dad later today. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say the most valuable thing is time with your children, with your family, really. Like we all want to financially support our family the best we can. And that's an important element of it. It's hard to support a family, if you don't have those means. But the number one currency for your children is time and attention. Yeah. And so I would say, if you're struggling or if you're doing well, it doesn't really matter. What your kids really want is just you to listen to them, play toys with them. I have an imaginative spirit, so for me, playing toys with my daughter is fun. I joke and we'll play dollhouse, whatever she wants to do. Okay, she hasn't painted my nails or done any of that goofy stuff yet, but we just play. I just love seeing her imagination take over.
Right.
So I'd say number one is spend time with your kids. That might sound like so simple and basic, but it's challenging, especially if you have a job and if you're not at home and you have people pulling you in different directions. Just remember, schedule time with your kids. If you have to actually literally put it in your calendar, do it. And look, I don't have it all figured out, but I can help as best as I can. So I just want to make sure I preface this with that. And first of all, someone is listening to this or not. Hospital right now waiting to meet their child as they're being called in the room. Congratulations, man. It's the most special thing you're ever going to experience is that first time you hold your child. I can remember seeing Isabel for the first time, giving her that kiss on her nose, the little button nose, called her Peanut. She was small and she's 8 now. She doesn't fit in my arms quite the same. And, she's kind of like too cool to even snuggle or whatever. But, we have a great relationship. And I think it's because I did put that time and attention into her. I haven't always been great about it. And that's one thing I reflect on is I can get better at giving her even more time when she's with me. Now, I got divorced back in 2017. So the last handful of years have been more challenging.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, if somebody is going through a divorce, talk to that guy real quick. Realize that you may actually have a better relationship, or it's possible to still have a great relationship if it's good. And if you have a bad relationship, you can actually improve it after the divorce. Realize that things do happen for you, not always to you. If you have that mindset, you can really tackle things a lot differently than the victim mentality. So if you're going through, crap right now and it feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, realize that, hopefully you have scheduled time with your children still. Like I'm blessed to have my daughter 6 days out of the month, 2 weekends of 3 days. And those weekends, man, I schedule the time with her and I really make it difficult for people to get a hold of me. And they know that I'm not available. And you can schedule as much time as you want throughout the week with me. I have a calendar that people literally book with me, but they're not going to get me on a Saturday when Isabel's in town. So,
nice.
So what I'm trying to say is I actually have a better relationship and more time with her after the divorce than I did when we all lived under the same roof. She was 2 at that time, 2 or younger, so she doesn't remember it. But I was always working. I was in corporate at that time, so I didn't have my own business. So I'd work 8, 9 in the morning until 9 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock at night sometimes. Yeah. And so I barely saw her. Like I saw her when she woke up, gave her a kiss, gave my wife a kiss, and off I went. And then I came home. Wife would either be half asleep, little note, see you tomorrow. Yeah. Isabel's in bed. And then on the weekends, our family always wanted to see Isabel. So she'd be kind of entertained by other people. My wife's parents lived nearby. They used to just pop in whenever they wanted and stuff. And so the weekends would always be planned by my ex-wife. And I would have Isabel one-on-one for minutes. And then after the divorce, I get her for the whole weekend. She's one-on-one with me the entire time.
Wow.
So I'm not trying to say I'm happy about the divorce or anything, because, there were some things that came that were difficult with that whole situation. I'm happy now. I think it was the right decision. I feel we made the right decision for both of us as parents. But I'm just saying the good news, if I look at it from that lens, I could be very, it was hard and everything, and I had to go through all those emotions. But reflecting on it, I can see the good in it. And the BG that you see across my chest right here, this is actually branded merch for Mic'd Up. Be great and be grateful. I start and end every day in gratitude, and I think about gratitude often. And I just think about, I'm grateful for everything, even if it's a bad situation. I try to think about what good could have come from this. And so realize that you may have a great relationship even after the divorce, and it could be better. So those are kind of the 1A, 1B is spend time and realize if, You can have, whether you're married or divorced or whatever, you can work on that situation with creating time for your family. I'd say the other thing is like genuinely be interested in what they got going on. Like if they're an infant and they're just, they're just drawing on themselves, playing with their toys, kind of
Yeah.
looking out into the world. Soak that up and just enjoy that moment. It goes very quickly. Before you know it, she's going to be crawling around, running around. They get faster and faster as time goes.
Yeah.
Then she's on her scooter out the door, riding her bike, whatever, and it goes very fast. So I would say like soak up the moment, and just enjoy everything from, those really early day moments where she's just welcome, or he
Yeah.
welcomed into the world, into watching her ride a bike for the first time.
Yeah.
Um, then the other thing I would say, if I still got like one or two more points, I would say every kid pops like popcorn at a different time.
Okay. I
And
like
when you
this.
when you
Let's go
when you
there.
cook that popcorn,
Yeah.
right? Some kids pop right away. Some kids take a little longer. My daughter, for instance, um, learning to read and write and stuff, she didn't have an interest at all. So, like, she likes to play and create. She'll look at a book and make her own story. She'll read it to you, but not the words. She
Hmm.
makes up her story. So her creativity is off the charts. But
Wow.
sitting there and want to learn letters and stuff early on, she was not a big fan. So school is a little bit of a tough thing, and she's getting better, but she's popping now. She's 8 years old and she's starting to get more interested, and she gets
Okay.
excited about school more than she did 2, 3 years ago. So as a parent, you're going to have siblings that may have kids. So you have nieces, nephews, the neighbor's kid, the kid in soccer, the kid in hockey, whatever, that's scoring more goals than your kid. And you're always
Yeah.
trying to be that competitive parent. And we live a little bit, I think the word is what, cathartically
Yeah.
through our children. But just be careful. It's like, man, everybody's going to pop differently. And what your kid has some special skills in or talents, and just the beauty of them being them is makes them uniquely beautiful. And try not to do that comparison game, because sometimes you're the one who's, maybe your kid scored 40 goals in hockey and like the neighbor's kid can barely skate. Are you going to be like, oh, my kid's better than? No, of course.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully you'd be humble about the whole thing. And then if you're the parent where your kid's like struggling to skate and you see the kid next door who's the same age that's doing circles at the pond, um, it's okay. Like, who knows? Your kid's going to grow and excel and be beautiful in their own way. And if I have anything else I could say or add to it, man, just as a dad, um, I would encourage, like, I think I mentioned this to you, maybe it was off camera, but get them involved in what you're doing so they can feel and understand and appreciate who you are and like what
Hmm.
your interests are.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking of my dad right here. I think this was off camera when I told you that he was
Yeah.
a big
I love
Yankees
it.
fan. And so I'm a huge Yankees fan as well currently. And just those special moments. He took me to the old Yankee Stadium when I was a kid, and whenever I watch him play, whether it's in person or on TV, I can almost feel my dad's presence there, and him sharing all the stats about. He knew stats in his head, man. He was like a
Yeah.
historian for the Yankees. Um, but he involved me in that. Like, we used to watch games together and he'd teach me about it. Now, I didn't have to become a baseball player, a coach, or watch every game to be included in that. He just kind of showed me what he liked. If you like cars, and maybe your dad likes fixing cars or whatever, not every kid's going to want to become a mechanic, but they have that like understanding of what makes dad tick, and you appreciate him. Um, and your kids appreciate you. If you're listening to this right now, if they're little and maybe they don't get it yet, they will. And just include them in some of the things that you find cool, but don't force it. Don't be like, I liked baseball, so you have to play shortstop on your little team,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
your neighborhood team or whatever. Like, they're going to find something. And just I would say, like, remember to support what you see going on. you know we have so much more influence over our children than I think we realize. But I notice, like, if you go to your children, things are more caught than they are taught.
Hmm.
And I think that could be
Right.
the highlight of this interview right there.
There you go. I love
So
that.
when you're doing things and your kids are around, they're catching on what you're saying, what you believe in. If you say something like, hey, let's get up, first thing we do is make our bed. If you get up and don't make your bed and your kid
Yeah.
sees you do that, and then 2 days later, you're like, make your bed. And he's like, but Dad, you don't even do it. He may not say that to you. She may not say that to you, but they're catching it all. And if you go and sit there and say, this is the right way to do things, sometimes your kid's going to just look at you and they may nod your head and feel that they learned the lesson. But realize that what's even more important is they're catching what you're doing. And they will, I feel from my experience, even hold that to higher standards because they know you're just being you and you're not trying to manipulate's a strong word, but like when you're coaching them, you may have an other reason that you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's super important to realize kids' minds are always on and they're downloading information at a rapid speed. So, hey, if you goofed up, acknowledge it, talk about it, and then fix it yourself, literally through your actions, and your kids will pick up on it and you're good to go.
I love it. And we kind of live life on a stage as a dad with really no training. Again, I remember going back to my days at the hospital, taking my son home, my oldest son, for the first time, and walking to the car, and I'm like looking back behind me, like, no one's coming with me. Like, you trust me with this guy? Like, oh my gosh, I have no idea.
There's no receipt. There's no instruction manual.
Nobody checks you out or signs a paper as you leave. They're like, see ya, bye.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh,
Peace
I can't
out.
believe
You're good.
Right. And all the things you don't know, right? You just don't know. And then you kind of have to live them together with your partner. And if you're a single dad, you got to figure this out on your own. The idea of Dad Space, our podcast, is that I would just like to provide something to dads to listen to get encouragement. And I love what you're sharing because you're touching on so many different aspects of being a dad that I can just see people be like, yeah, that's me. That's how I'm feeling right now. Or that might be in my future. And now I have some knowledge that I can put into place.
Yeah.
What kind of things did your dad model for you, in addition to what you've mentioned, that really stuck with you, that you're like, that's what I want for my family?
I'll come up with a couple of those, but before I do, I want to give you a compliment too for creating a platform. This show in itself, the fact that somebody is here and listening to this shows that they care and that they're making an effort and they're looking for information to become a better dad or continue to grow on already being a great dad. And so I just want to say kudos to anyone who's tuning in, and we appreciate you being here. And then the other thing is like getting around other great guys, whether that's if you're a Christian and it's a group at church, maybe you do a little Bible study, some dad talk, whatever. It doesn't have to be Christian too. It could just be get some guys together that are dads. If it's if you're going through like a divorce and you're struggling there, find a platform. There's got to be a group online. If there isn't one, create one and invite other guys to it, like you did with this podcast. So I'd say resources, man. We live in an age where there's no shortage of information. So if you are struggling and you're looking for something, it's either out there or you can create it and more people will come to you. So that's my advice there. As far as my dad, did you ask what are some things that he did that I feel he did well?
Yeah, a good lesson that you're like, I'm going to put that in my family. I need to model that. That was such a great example to me.
You know what's funny is my brother was just in town. He lives in Tampa now, and he came back up to Buffalo. We grew up in Buffalo, and we were watching TV with my mom. And it was my sister's shower this weekend, baby shower, speaking of being parents. So she's got her first born coming in a couple weeks. Little Juliana. We're excited to have her as an addition to the family.
Nice.
And we're watching Monty Python with my mom. Okay. My brother and I, and this is where my dad comes in. He was very serious, old school Italian, worked at the Buffalo stamping plant, stamping out car doors for Ford. He was a rough and rugged guy, but he had this goofy sensibility, sensitive, like persona. Like it was like he was like a character, and he always used to say, you got to have character. And so I learned from him that you can be serious when you need to be, you can be a disciplinarian when you need to be. And it was all about respect. It's an Italian thing. You respect your family. When you go to school, if you goof up, you feel worse about it. Like the principal couldn't discipline you more than your parents because you broke their respect.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it was with my dad. But he also had this goofy side. We watched the Three Stooges and Monty Python. So now when I watch it, like as an adult, it just brings me back similar to watching the Yankees, of these happy moments with my dad. I remember he used to laugh so hard he'd be like kicking his legs, and there's moments in shows that I watch now and I could picture him there on the couch, just like laughing hysterically. So I learned to be goofy, and with my daughter, I'm very silly with her, and she's got this beautiful, silly personality that comes out. And I don't know if it's genetic at all, but like, she got it from my dad too, because, I am blessed the fact that they knew each other because my dad passed away a couple of years ago in 2020. So my daughter was, 5, 6 years old. She does have memories of her grandfather.
Good.
But they may be a little blurry and getting blurrier as she gets older. But thanks to like social media and having a phone, I got a lot of videos of them goofing around. She used to get her sticker books and put them all over his face. And I'm telling you, if I was 6 and did that to my dad back then, he would have flipped out. He would have gotten very mad. I would have got yelled at. His granddaughter does it to him. He's laughing, she's giggling, and he's having a blast. And so he definitely got softer as a grandpa than he did as a dad. But man, I just always remember and appreciated my favorite times with him were watching comedies and just having that goofiness. And it kind of taught me, like I said, there's a time and place to be serious, and there's open it up to have some silly times, and you don't always have to be so, like, life doesn't always have to be so rugged and serious.
Yeah. So
And
that's a gift. That's a gift that your dad has given you, that memory, and just flipping on that movie and picturing him in the room. That's a gift.
Yeah.
Right.
And I pass it on to Isabel now. She watch some of the shows she watches. Most of them have some comedy to them, and she likes that,
I love when our kids can see us as real people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like I remember my dad is long past, and I remember sitting with him in a restaurant and just asking him about him when he was a kid. What were you like? Like, what did you like when you were 5, when you were 10? Who were you? Like, how did you meet mom? That kind of stuff. Like, take me back there so I can learn the history. And just having those moments, I really miss those. Right. And I guess one of the biggest thing I miss for my dad is looking down on my phone and seeing dad calling. Right. And you're like, oh, should I take this call? It's my dad calling me. And then those don't happen anymore. And I really miss that. When you have something exciting to talk about, or something that's just eating you up inside, that you don't have a chance to actually reach out to dad and say, I need your wisdom. I need your help right now. And that's, I guess that's the one thing that I will always want to keep in my mind, is being available to my kids for that, because I know I miss it. So if I can be that to my kids, it's a lesson I'm learning and trying to remind myself every day. So
yeah, we don't know, man. We don't know when the end comes. He was definitely taken. He had COVID, went into the hospital. It was a time when nobody could go visit, and he was only in there for about a week and passed. And he had some medical stuff like previous to that, but he always fought through it. He was, like I said, that built Ford tough kind of guy. Like, he might be sick, or he had cancer, even went through treatments. He was fine. After 15 years of that, he was still standing, and then his immune system was just too weak, I think, with COVID. And I didn't feel like they quite had a full understanding of what needed to happen. And I'm not trying to question what happened behind doors, but I wasn't there to see any of it. And I feel like if myself and my mom and our family would have been able to be bedside with him with some positivity, I think he would have had a fighting chance compared to being disconnected from everybody. And who knows what really happened. But I will say, if you have your dad and your mom and you're able to talk to them on the phone, and you're not doing it on a regular basis, I'm not judging you right now, but I'm just saying, figure out like why. And because there's going to be a moment in time when you're not able to do that, be on the receiving end, or call them as well. And it is a special thing. And I have a lot of regrets that I didn't spend as much time with my dad or have some conversations with him I would have liked to. And honestly, doing the podcast, I was doing the show while he was still around for about a year, little like a year and a month when he passed. And I had a whole year where I could have sat down and interviewed him. and I wanted to get him on the show. He has a crazy story. He came over from Venezuela. Like my grandparents and family are from Italy, so they actually moved to Venezuela first and then the States. And he was only like 1 or 2. The joke is when he was born in Venezuela, the doctor said he weighed 2 coconuts. Like they didn't have any measuring. There was no official office. It was in the jungle, they said, So whenever he'd act like an animal at times, would say, yeah, he's from the jungle,
2
But
coconuts.
then he came to, the States and Buffalo and settled in and built something nice for the family. Blue collar family, right? Like worked his tail off out of high school, didn't go to college. He went to work. And that's basically what all my family, like my grandfather, same thing. They just worked hard for their family. And that's why, like, I feel it's a privilege to even be in like where I'm at right now, because if they didn't build the foundation and a couple generations of foundation now, who knows where I'd be? I wouldn't even have an opportunity. So their hard work and planning a foundation for the family is allowing me to kind of, continue to build on top of it and paint on top of it. There was something else I wanted to say too, just his story. Yeah, I would love to have been able to ask him a lot of those questions. I've heard him, either my uncle share stories about his childhood or my dad, growing up and everything. But man, there's just so many more, like great insights he would have been able to give. And I think he would have been great on the show. And so it just killed me that I don't have that opportunity. But I'll tell you what, remember I said earlier, everything happens for you, not to you. And the gratitude piece. Well, now I'm thinking, well, I got my mom. She's still here, so I'm going to interview her at some point, although she's more shy. I don't know if she'd want to do it, but maybe it's something that's not in the public eye. Maybe it's a personal family archive that we just talk. We just throw the mic on. Maybe even Isabel's there, whatever, brother, sister. And we just have like a family conversation that's recorded with some really cool stuff and some deep dive stuff that doesn't come up at the dinner table,
Yeah. What I love is you talked about
yeah.
this at the beginning with Isabella, that she comes in with you on the mic. So what you said you couldn't do with your dad, you're doing with your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? So there's a lesson learned and you're putting that into place right now for your daughter. So there's a great return there. I love that.
Never thought of it, but I think subliminally there's a connection there that I with intention that I didn't even really realize, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome, Mike. Thank you so much for being part of Dad Space. It is so great that we've connected, and I'm happy about how we connected, which is awesome as well. Is there any of these shows that you work on, any of the people that are part of your community in your podcast group that would be a good connection for our listeners? Because what I would love to get from you and from another podcast that you work with is like a little commercial that we can include in our podcast to promote their show as well. Because I just see there's a really good shows in your network that you have, and I'd love to kind of point people in that direction as well. So keep us in mind for that. And if any of those podcasts come to mind, I'd love to mention them here as well, in addition to yours.
Yeah, if you're interested in listening to kind of the journey side of things, of hearing about kind of the father figure in life, literally, like, and if you're interested in the Christian side of it, when we talk about father, we're thinking about God and the influence of Jesus. There's a show that I do called Along the Way Life's Journey with Carl Buccellato, and a fantastic human being and highly successful in business, but he's even a better human than he is a business person. Like, he's so successful there, but I think his real success in life is just what he means to his friends, family, and his network, and his heart. And he has guests on the show who talk about their walk through life, and a lot of times there is like the Christian faith side of it, but there's also, he interviewed like the original Top Gun, like the real Top Gun, way back in
Nice.
the 50s, or it was like 70 years ago, the original story, and that whole very interesting. And he's interviewed people, recently there's a guy who had multiple businesses that were successful, but he's also doing a thing where he created a book, a smaller book, not the Bible, but stories from the Bible that actually tell Jesus' story, like from like his entire story, because in the Bible it's out of order.
Yeah.
And it can be very overwhelming. Like if you hand like a new believer, someone who's interested in information, you like have them dive into the Bible. It's overwhelming and actually discourages them to even continue, where he actually like kind of took it and turned it into more easy digestible information of the actual story of who Jesus was and chronological order. And you can get the book on his website. I just produced a show last night. And, so if you go to Carl's show and you look at his latest episode 63, you'll see Josh Richardson. I can't talk today. Josh Richardson was the guest, and all the information's in the show notes. And yeah, you can go to the website and like order 3 books or 3,000, and they're free. And it's crazy. He's, I think because they have a lot of people funding it, and you can pay it forward. So when you get books, you can get it for free, or you can say like, I'm going to donate $25 or whatever. Nice. Thankfully they get enough donations where they're able to still do that. And his goal is 10 million people he wants to, that's the starting point. And I think they're at like 2.5 million right now, as far as how many have been distributed in a short period of time. So that's the kind of stuff that I get like juiced up. Like I was a part of that by producing that podcast, getting that content into the world. Now I feel I'm on purpose, just being someone who's in the middle of that process. That's one show. I would say mic'd up, not to do like the full on like self promo, but my show is so much not about me. I do what you do, like bring great guests on and let them shine, and a lot of the people I have on have a comeback story. Many of them are parents. I've had many episodes talking about the family dynamic, parenting. It's a show about mindset. So I feel like, and it's a show about entrepreneurship, but there's a lot of common denominators in what makes a great person great in business. It's really just about, you have to be a great person and human first and do these things. And it's a non-judgmental way, but we're just about getting better than we were yesterday. And so I feel like if you listen to the many episodes, over 170 that I have out, you can kind of pick and choose what guests sound and look interesting to you. But if you listen to that, I feel like as a dad, you're going to get some information that can help you become a better person, which then allows you to become a better dad, And then I also have a show, if you're more into like the business side of things and even entertainment, we produce 2000% Raise, which is a show with John Sarasani. I promise not all my clients are Italian, but Carl, myself, and John all happen to be paisans. Maybe there is a connection there, but... And his show is like, he started a business from his kitchen table, built it, sold it for like $10 million plus, made some great money on it. And now he's just like teaching people how to do it. He's an investor. He's a VC. And he started a podcast. Like actually he was a guest on my show and then reached out to me and was like, I want to do what you do, but for my audience. And there we go. And the conversation took over, and he's got 25 episodes out, and I think 24 came out Monday, so we're producing the 25th right now. He's excited about it. He's had some fantastic guests, including Randy Couture, who's a UFC fighter, Hall of Famer. Nice. Tracy Tudor, who's got a show or two that's on TV right now. She's a famous actress. And he's had many business people on as well that have some really cool stories. So I would say those 3 are some of the... I'm proud of all my clients, but as far as the conversation we're having, I think that's where I would lead somebody.
Good. We'll put links in the show notes to all of those as well. Mike, thank you for making time for us and being part of Dad Space. And again, thank you to your team for saying, hey, you should go on Dad Space. And that means a lot to me that we caught.
Shout out to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie at Social Chameleon is the one who connected the two of us. So thank
you, Anne-Marie. Thank you. And Mike, thank you for making time to jump on the mic and share your story. I love hearing Dad's stories. So awesome.
Yeah, not just blowing smoke, man, but this is one of my favorite interviews because how meaningful it was, and you did a great job as a host. Thank you guys for being with us today. And if you've been here all the way to the end, really appreciate you being with us.
Again, I love talking to podcasters. It's so easy. So easy.
Just did your outro for you. There you go.
I love it. It's awesome. Everyone, go check it out. Remember, your kids are going to catch, right? It's caught, not taught. There you go. Right there. Thanks for giving us that, Mike. I appreciate that. Thanks for listening to Dad Space today. Go check us out on all of our social media, YouTube, all that great stuff. You can find us as Dad Space Podcast. Real simple. Dad Space Podcast, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube. Email us, dadspacepodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for great guests to come on the podcast. If you have any feedback for us, let us know here at Dad Space. Looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode, right here of Dad Space. Follow us on your podcast app for more. Cheers. To you, Dad.